Hello guys, welcome to ASPE, first screencast on the skeletal system as part of the physiology area of the course. And this will be focusing on the body, and in the first instance we'll be focusing on movements at joints and how muscles cause this movement to take place. So if you have a quick look at the overview, what we've got there, obviously you don't need to write this stuff down, this is just the overview, the objectives of what you're going to cover. So we're looking at joints, movements and muscles, and in order to analyse these we're going to have to know the different types of synovial joint linked to kind of movement. We're also going to have to know movements that take place at these joints, and then finally we're going to look at the muscles that cause this movement to take place, their roles, and also the contraction types that take place. On top of this, we've got this little thing here, planes of movement, which we'll have a look at after we've done these bits here. Okay, so first up though, so if you have a look over, I think it's quite important at this point is for you to have a look forward and see the kind of exam questions you would be expected to answer, and to just for your own knowledge, I suppose, to see how closely linked this would be to GCSE PE if you had done it. Okay, so if you look here, there's a couple of questions. If you have a look on here, so you've got anatomy physiology there. So you look in here, it's got a resistance machine. On here, it's got the joint, which is a knee. And it wants you to know the synovial joint type. It wants to know the movement that's taking place on the upwards arrow here. The agonist, which will be the muscle that's in control, the muscle's in agony, the contracting muscle. And the antagonist, the muscle that's relaxing in direct opposition. So that's the kind of thing you look at. Same over here, hip joint. Okay, so the movement's going up that's a neutral position down there. When it goes up like that, it's asking you what joint touches the hip, what's the movement that's happening here when it goes from there to there, what's the agonist, and it gives you the antagonist here, which will be paired muscles, which we'll look at in lesson 2 or 3. So that's where you kind of be looking to go towards. I think that's quite important because it gives you a little bit of kind of a vision of what you're going to have to do. So if we start off with what we're actually going to do then, joints, that's going to be our first focal point. So joint then is an area where two bones articulate to create movement. So if you have a look here, you've got your kind of humerus here, and you don't need to know bones at ASP, which is quite good, but it can be helpful from GCSE if you do know them. So you've got humerus here, as you see coming down there, then you've got the radius and ulna here. Now if you think of that, so your long bone at the top of your arm, your elbow here, and then you've got your two radius and ulna coming here. So the joint is this bit here, where the two sets of bones meet. And that's important. We need to know 3 different types of synovial joints. So I'll move on to those. Your notes need to start now. Okay, so we'll go on to this. So Cornell notes, remember, we'll be looking at this. So to start off with, you have synovial joint types and movements as your kind of heading. Then your key question, which will align it, will look something like this. So ball and socket joint consists of the hip and shoulder and allows the most joint movements. Then you've got which joint consists of hip and shoulder as your question, because you're using that explanation. So I've explained that. Get your Cornell notes set up, and I will go through the key bits now. So we've got then ball and socket joint. Okay, it's the first type of synovial joint. I don't need you to make notes on this. You can just have a look at it. Okay, so you've got ball-shaped head, articulates with a cut-shaped or concave socket, allows a large range of movement. So ball and socket in ASP, only 2 places in the body we can find them, are the shoulder and the hip. Okay, so the shoulder and the hip, that's what you're looking for, and they have that ball and socket, and they are the 2 joints of the body that will allow the most movement. So coming back from there, the hinge joint then. A hinge joint is, if you think about a hinge joint, you're kind of looking at, watch a door when it opens and closes. Imagine the kind of the panel of the door when it opens and closes. That is like a hinge joint, which can only go in 2 directions. Now there are 3 examples of a hinge joint, okay? And if you think about it, it goes forward and backwards. So your elbow, if you're standing with your arms, your palms facing forward, it can only go forward and backwards. The knee, when you're standing still, can go forward and backward. And then you've got the ankle, okay, will go forward and backwards. So what we have to do from there is that's a hinge joint. So we're looking at elbow, knee and ankle. They are the 3 sites in the body which are hinge joints, open and closed movement. Then you've got condyloid. Final one, okay, only one of these, okay. So what we're looking at, again, I do not need any description. All you need to know, the condyloid is linked to the wrist joint. So far, you would have 3 Cornell notes headings, ball and socket, hinge, condyloid, and you would just give examples of those places in the body where these joints are. Okay, that is it. None of this. Don't waste your time. Not going to be examined. Going on. Next thing we have to look at, if you remember, if I just go back to here, if we look at your kind of key focus here, we've looked at joint types, and now we've got to look at movement. Okay, so that is the key thing we'll be going on to now. So we'll quick go back through there. So joint movements then. what movements can take place. Now we've got flexion. Now flexion is where a movement which decreases the joint angle, okay, and it usually happens at the front of the body, okay. So it's the angle decreases between two bones. So flexion of the elbow, you'll see the bottom arm bones of the arm coming towards the top bone of the arm because the angle decreases. If you look up here, can you see that there? So if that's the start point, it goes up to there. The angle here, this one would be neutral, okay, so 180, then it'll go down to here, 45. So you can see how that changes, okay. So going off from there then, and the next one, extension, this movement which decreases the joint angle, okay, so it usually goes backwards, okay, so there's a decrease in the angle. If you want to just draw these, you don't have to write all this stuff out, or you can shorten it. Dorsiflexion then, so if I can just get this to kind of be slightly different here, so it's moving at the ankle, okay, and the toes move up, okay, so that's something you might want to just get that in your notes. If you can see over here, dorsiflexion goes that way, and then you've got plantarflexion, okay, which is when I always think a good way to describe this is when you plant your toes down. Okay, this only move, the only place these can take place is at the ankle joint. Okay, right, going down from here then, plantarflexion. Oh, sorry, we've done that one. Abduction then. Abduction, the key thing is the movement away from the midline of the body. Why is this an easy one to remember? Because abduction, if you say you're abducting someone, or whatever you're doing, if you're abducting someone or something, you're taking it away. So if you look over to here, okay, so your abduction, it's moving away from the midline of the body from a neutral position. So it goes that way, that one goes that way. It could also be the hip goes that way, okay, you can see how that would work. Adduction, on the other hand, is when you're adding from the outside in. Okay, so it's a movement of the limb towards the midline of the body. So here you can see adduction, you're adding in this way. Okay, nice and simple. Horizontal flexion then. So horizontal flexion basically is looking at movement of the limb towards from the midline of the body parallel to the ground. So if I show you on this here, you're looking up here, what it is, you can draw this if it makes it easier. So flexion, the angle decreases between bones. If that's a neutral position here, someone's arm is like this, or sorry, down there, as you can see, if you go from there to there, that time that you're decreasing the angle between the scapula here and the humerus there. You don't need to know these bones, but it just makes sense. If you're starting there, there's a massive angle between those bones, and then it starts to decrease here. So horizontal flexion could be used for a discus. It could be used for a bench press if you bent that elbow there because you're pushing out this way. Hopefully that will make sense to people. Horizontal extension just means you're coming back the other way. So it means you're coming back, so from the middle of the body, it's coming back towards your body. So it goes this way. So that's horizontal extension. Now, going on from here, rotation. It can be two ways. Rotation is either coming in towards your body, okay, or it's coming away. So basically, your shoulder is kind of pivoting and coming in, whereas circumduction is this one here, where it's going all the way around like a conical shape. And the key difference between this is you kind of circumduction is kind of combination of kind of flexion, extension, abduction, and adduction, and it's a circular shape that you would do, say, for a butterfly when you're doing swimming. Okay, so there's your key things. Make notes on those. These ones, you have to be able to see them in a movement. You have to understand them. Do you need to know all the definitions? Not massively. Just get something in your head that allows you, if you see it on these diagrams here, you understand it. Okay, so that's your key notes. You need to have your movements here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you also need your kind of key synovial joints from the back bit there. Okay, thanks very much.